All right, welcome back to another Conquest Corner. On this particular episode, we are going to be continuing going through the Nords. Specifically, the way I chose to break this up, since the Nords got entire rework, and we're going to do something similar when we get to the Wadroon, which will be later this week. But we wanted to break them. I wanted to break them up in some way, so I don't make a multi-hour video all at once, because that's also tough to do, but also a little bit unwatchable because it's kind of big, and I had to put tons of timestamps in. That is not going to go well. So instead, what we're going to be doing here for this is we're discussing them by essentially keyword. So we're on the keyword for mortals. I've already put out the video for the half-blood units. So those are the ones that are the mix of the exalted and the mortals together to create, effectively, if you think from Norse mythology, your monster type things. So your trolls, ogres, all that sort of stuff. And what we're going to look at today is just the regular old mortals. These are the ones who effectively weren't messed up by the spires. So we're going to go through the changes related to this. The goal of this is to talk about what the different units are now, how their stats have changed, thoughts on where they fit in, the good, the bad, and all of that around it. There'll be a video later once all of this is done, kind of discussing both all the rest of the equipment that we're not going to be touching, but also the army overall and sort of the viewpoint on them now. Keep in mind, if your goal is to pick up anything like this or anything else for Conquest, especially now as we approach a holiday season, we have a discount code in the show notes below. It's Train Kickers. Saves you 10%, helps us out as well, so everyone gets a little something out of it. All right, let's get into it. So, for anyone who hasn't seen this before, layout here is the new on the left, old on the right. And for each of these, we're going to start with the basic army rules. So we have sort of a viewpoint from which to stand, or a spot from which to stand. Maybe that makes more sense. But they kept the same three names of the rules, although the rules have changed, some greatly, some only a little bit. Ice, Flesh, and Blood has not actually changed too much. There's some important nuance changes, but overall, the effect of what it's attempting to do is very much similar. So, regiments in your army, they can charge through hindering terrain and still be inspired. Normally, if you are heavy or medium, you have amounts. If you're at least half going through and all, stuff like that, then you're not getting inspired. No, this, you can go straight through terrain, you don't care. And if you're going through zonal terrain where you take damage, so it's dangerous, pieces like that, then you're taking half the wounds. They remove the part about rivers. Maybe no one ever uses them. We never do. Right. Blooded Einhjar is exceedingly different. Blooded Einhjar used to say you get an extra attack if they're injured, if anywhere in that stand is injured, and your characters can break people in duels. What it does now, if you charge that turn, your command stand or your stand itself, if you're just a monster, counts for one extra for scoring purposes. So, or seizing, I should say. So that means if you hit someone with a 3-pack, they're essentially counting for 4, which means if you run into a monster, monsters are only 3 naturally, you're now taking it, or my monster charging, my Mountain Jotnar charging into your any monster otherwise, I'm now winning that objective, assuming we're both still there at the end of the turn. They put the acronym ABC, initialism, because it's not a word, you cannot pronounce it. And acronyms are pronounceable, like scuba, otherwise it's called initialism. But the ABC, always be charging. So your army wants to be charging. You're getting bonuses related to charging. We're going to see your rules later for the mortals. Several of them have impact hits, so you want to be hitting people. Your other rule is prophecy unfulfilled. So for prophecy unfulfilled, the first part is effectively the same, and then there's a little bit of a second part as well. If an enemy regiment is already engaged, other non-monster regiments get +2 to the distance that for when they charge them. So that was essentially the same, or is the same. Second part is that when you charge an enemy regiment, you get better resolve. So again, you want to be charging because you are a glass cannon. You are wanting to get in, get your hits, and then you're denying their objectives. You have a better resolve, so maybe you'll stick around better. But that's essentially what you're looking at for here. Not that everything's a glass cannon, but that's, I think, a fair analogy to the army in general. All right. Now, like you said, what we're going to be going through for this particular video, we're we're going through this particular video is we are going to take a look at anyone who's immortal. So that means we have 3 characters to talk about. We're going to talk about the Jarl, and then we're going to go back to talk about the 2 casters, because this way we can talk about the supremacy with the Jarl, because it makes the most sense. So Jarl has raid tactics. It used to be surprise attack. We're going to see that based off of the tactics that you get, or the tribal tactics, you can still have some of these pieces. Essentially, it gave you opportunities, so you're getting bonuses if you're in the flank or the rear charging, and you get some extra attacks if you're in the flank or rear charging. So you want to be hitting them from the sides or behind. Raid tactics now says all the mortal regiments in your army get the warlord's tribal tactics as if the warlord was attached to that unit. So it's not even just your warband, it's the entire army. They count as having a warlord with them in terms of tribal tactics. Because tribal tactics say when, where your warlord is, does something. We'll get into those in 1 second. It's always active, even if you've been destroyed. So let's quickly go down and take a look at that, and then we'll take a look at the Jarl. I think that makes the most sense. Sorry, just waiting for it to get to it. There we go. Okay, let's take a look at these tactics so we can understand what you could be doing and then see the character, what it means. So direct assault. So notice, it says this regiment's character stand. So you're now counting all of them as if your character was in there. So, the regiment this character stand is currently attached to. So all your mortals count as having it attached. They count as heavy for the purpose of inflicting wounds on objective markers. Keep in mind, heavies can inflict 2 wounds per instance. That means a heavy that can do impact and gets the swing can actually take out a marker in 1 turn. What's nice about tribal tactics, just to make sure we clear it up now, is that you pick your tribal tactic when you get to the game right before it starts. So you get to decide when you take a look at what is my opponent running, what's the mission, what are we doing, now I choose it. So if there's several objectives, we have some missions out there with 4 objectives, pretty good option. Everything then, especially if it has impact, has the option of taking something down in 1 swing, or 1 hit and then the next action. You don't have to wait the multiple 3s. Draw them in, you gain opportunist. So remember, if you take the Jarl, it is all your mortals gain opportunist. Otherwise, it's the one that your warlord's in. Part of the old rule was opportunist, so if you really liked it, you could get it back. And last one is take the flanks. While this regiment's character stand is currently attached to, while the regiment this character stand to is currently attached to, engage an enemy regiment in flank or rear. So hit someone in the flank or rear. They do not get to count towards seizing. Now they can still contest, but they don't seize. So you're getting to count 1 extra when you are charging in on your command stand, and they won't be allowed to seize. So they could contest you, but they can't seize it. Gives you more options to be able to get the point yourself, or at least stop them from being able to take it. Even if it's a giant unit, hey, maybe I can't take it because your unit's too big, but I can guarantee you don't get it. To me, especially with this idea of handing it to all my mortal units, assuming if I'm running Jarl, I'm taking multiple mortal units, then if there's a lot of objectives, I like direct assault. Otherwise, I probably like take the flanks, because I like the idea of, the way I always saw Nords in the past was their goal was often score fast, score early, because they don't always have this sort of staying power. This is a great way to deny your opponent the chance to score. So even the objectives that maybe you aren't getting onto, they're not getting points from. You're getting the points from your own, can rack up those points. So let's take a look at the Jarl then. So now we know a little bit about him, we can actually take a look at him. All right, Jarl went up by 5 points. That's absolutely nothing, all said and done. When we take a look at his stats, keep in mind that your move now is attached to the unit. That's why no one has a move stat anymore. We are looking at the stats have stayed exactly the same. You're still 6 attacks, you're 4 wounds. Resolve 3 with a 2 defense. You still have shield, you still have your impact 2, and last time they gave them forward force, you still have it. You can take 1 of each upgrade. That makes sense. Before, though, if you notice, they didn't actually take masteries before over here. So he only took trophies. Now he takes masteries. You no longer have the aspects because that's been removed. Essentially, that's what You can kind of think of the tribal tactics is, though it's not exactly a one-to-one comparison. Takes mostly mortals, except when you get to the Steel Chosen and the Sea Yonar. But otherwise, the other units that you would want to take, potentially putting them in Ulfanar, Bear Sarks, or I guess either of the others, kind of depends on your particular theme. But I kind of like them in a little bit potentially heavier things, although you're going to get your bonuses whether or not he's alive anyway, and every unit counts with a bonus, so much less important that he goes into the unit you really want to be doing the special thing. Overall, his Warlord trait I like better because it's a lot more adaptable. You can change it to be what you want. He himself did not get stronger, not at a base character level. All right, let's take a look at the other two casting characters here, though. So the Shaman and the Volva. The Shaman used to have Call the Storm. So you would pick two of your non-monster regiments. They get Vanguard. So, and there was a lot of ways in this army to get a lot of flank. So you were very reliably getting your army in and getting them up the field. Whereas for the lady instead, she gives +1 to evade characteristic, excluding the character stands. Useful. The biggest problem is it maxes at 2, and you have a decent amount of your units kind of like sitting at the 2, and they can't get better. Not bad, but I didn't see it taken very much. I think it was the other ones that were taken quite a bit more. Now, both of them have divine protection. All friendly regiments are getting +1 to their evade, again to that max of 2. So good. Don't get me wrong, more evade is good, although capping them, I understand why, but it does kind of lower it a bit. Also, in addition, friendly regiments within range of an objective zone may be the target of a friendly character's spellcasting action, regardless of the range or line of sight. If you are a self-spell, it's unaffected, so you can't cast self-spells on anyone else. And it's always active. So, much like Spire Biomancy abilities, there's ways to get them to count from an objective. You take either of these as your Warlord, you can cast your spells on your units anywhere if they're within range, or if they're sitting on an objective. Notice they just have to be within range of an objective zone. You don't even have to be taking it. Better overall, I feel. Okay, it changes a bit of what they do. You're losing the Vanguard. You're getting, the +1 to your evade, which is nice, but they were two separate things. Here now, you're getting your evade and you're getting your spells everywhere you want, which is a nice strong move. So I like it overall. I think it also, in some ways, if you're going to give Nords bonuses related to charging, and then you can give potentially tons of your units Vanguard, depending on how many rounds you come in across, not counting your monsters, that might have been a bit too much. Realistically, it probably was. So I don't want to necessarily say you were changed for the better in terms of strength. You were changed for the better at minimum in terms of the game. All right, let's take a look at the Shaman. So still 80 points, still pre-6, still pretty low in terms of stats. They didn't change. He's defense 1, evade 1. He's an old wizened man, but he's immortal. So when you take a look, White Waste Tribesmen are out. That's not a unit anymore. But otherwise, he takes everything he did before. You still have the same as that Mastery. On the Masteries, it says Arcane can only be taken by him and the Volva anyway, so that's all you have to really worry about. And you know your list of spells. Notice your spells are, one, we're going to take a look at spells in a moment, but you actually do have more than before. Before you only had 4 spells, now you're sitting at 6. So what is it? Dominate is brand new, and Enrage is brand new. So we'll get to his spells. Actually, let's just get to his spells now. We'll come back for her just because it makes sense if we're talking about him to be referencing exactly what his spells are. So let's pull up the old spells as well, so that we can kind of compare these two and talk a little about. Now, so we have some brand new spells to talk about. So for things that are different, Blurred Vision, let's take a look. Yeah, Blurred Vision is identical. Mistweave is actually better. It used to be only against volleys, +1 to your evade. Now it's your evade is just +1. Again, max at 2, but +1. Very useful in some of these models that if this was your Warlord, you were maybe at a 0 evade, Got 1, now you're at 2. So, pretty strong. Reshape Destiny used to be reroll all failed defense rolls. Reshape Destiny, now it's a self spell instead. And all friendly regiments declaring a charge action while within 10 are unstoppable. You have a good amount of banners, although this does help. Let me see. Yeah, scroll and check. So it's going to help things like your Beast Pack, your Oogers, your Jotnars. So your other units will have it if they want, because they can either come with, I think they all pretty much come with standards base. They removed a lot of you having to buy standards now. So they're there. But, you're getting unstoppable, which is someone who plays armies that your big things don't always have unstoppable. It gets kind of rough. We take a look at Hoarfrost. It's now attunement 4. It used to be attunement 3, so easier to get off. It used to be an AP2 hit per success. And if you're engaged, you take a little bit more. Now it's a hit per success, but it's AP1. So easier to get off because it's on 4s, but it's only AP1 instead of AP2. That's all the old spells. You got some new ones. You got Dominate, 12 inches at attunement 3. -1 to resolve. This is a unit that wants to be hitting people. This, as I was saying, is a faction that wants to be getting in, hitting people. You need to be damaging them out before they get to swing back at you. Especially when we take a look at a lot of these mortal units, they don't have the super strong staying power that a lot of other factions may have, or some other units will have. So lowering their resolve, you're going to get more damage onto them. Very useful. Enrage, it is a self, so casting onto himself at 3s. All friendly regiments within 10 of the character lose broken, as if they had performed rally. So you have potentially several broken units, or now you don't have to waste your actions on it. You could have this guy, especially if you maybe the last round had several breaks, go early with Enrage, 10 inches, unbreak everyone. Now they can inspire and swing. What I especially like is that his self spells only go on him. However, they help the people around him. So it's not really about helping him, which I think is actually really cool. I'd like to see that more, that your self spells kind of help people around you. That's he is a priest 6. He's not devout though, so you still need these 2 successes. But since you're casting on yourself, at least you don't have to worry quite as much. It's easier to get away from like interference and all, because then they had to be in the range of view, not just the target. All right, let's talk about the lady then. All right, let me scroll to her on this side. There she is. So, still 100 points. I have a feeling she didn't really change at all. Nope. 5 attacks, good amount of attacks. No evade, which is funny. Her buff gives evade, but she has none base. Pre-6, but she is devout. So anything being cast on them, you're getting 1 on success. We will take a look. Same amount of spells. So same spells. We'll talk about if any of them are different or not. And same exact things that you can take. All right, this is editing me stopping in here very briefly to talk through something that I'll clean up more than I did in the original video. For the factions that they've entirely redone, so the Nords and the Wadroon, they've changed the way that equipment works and generally have less equipment overall. But the other thing is the restrictions related to equipment are much different, if any. So there used to be a restriction that only wizard type characters can take arcane items, and if you're a wizard, you can't take armor. Rather than those large blanket things anymore, now it's on the individual entries. So an arcane item will probably only list, or will only list, the wizard or priest character, say in the case here. So previously, the vulva was able to wear armor, and it had to be specifically called out. That's no longer called out, because now if a piece of armor wouldn't be allowed for them to wear, it would specifically call out that they cannot wear it, rather than a blanket rule. All right, now back to it. Having said that, let's take a look at some spells. All right, so let's see what's different. Aspect of Fenrir. You used to be Terrifying 1. It was target self scaling. Now it's still target self, but now you become unyielding. So rather than making people afraid, you get to keep objectives. That plays very, very strongly into the they're going to take it from you sort of feel. Fruit of the Golden Tree. You heal 1 wound, and then you get some reroll, some morale. You heal 1 wound, and in addition, infantry targets heal 1 additional wound per success. So just better healing. Keep in mind, if One of these, either caster as your warlords, and you can heal anyone on objective anywhere. So if it's infantry, you can get a lot of heals, 2 for 1. Glory of Valhalla. Glory of Valhalla used to be +2 to your resolve. Now it's Indomitable 2. So your resolve isn't changing, but every time you get to auto-succeed 2 of your failures. Depending on your resolve or how many you take, could be better or worse. Especially if they happen to be lowering it and you're not taking too many, then you're automatically sure that you get at least 2 successes. Depends on the role. The +2 to your resolve is probably actually overall better, but it's less of a it's more, or maybe a better way to put it, it's more of a negative play experience, just for the simple fact that you could be getting to a resolve that maybe you're not getting through also because of the size of your unit and all. This way, hey, I'll make you take resolves. You're going to fail some. You get to auto pass too, but I'm getting more on you. So it's better for the health of the game. It's weaker, but overall I think better for the health. Hela's Caress used to be Decay 3. It is now you take 1 hit per success. Now it occurs on 4s though, so easy to get off. The enemy takes 1 hit per success. Depending on the size of the unit. Okay, depending on the size of the unit, potentially better. Okay, Decay was always on 5s and 6s that you take a wound. We're taking a look at it that way, not worrying about anything else in there. So, and then it stops where now it's 1 per success, but you have your defense, which, Decay didn't care about, but maybe your defense probably, you were only failing 1/3, you're now probably failing more than 1/3, and then you're resolving as well. So overall, better. An improvement for sure. Unless, I guess, maybe not if you were a giant unit. So if you're like a 3-pack, this is definitely better. If you were like a giant brick of phalangites, like a 7 or 8 or 9 thing, no, then the Decay is probably better because you have that many more stance to roll for. And Warbringer's Light. It is now 12 inches instead of 10. Used to give a unit blessed, still gives a unit blessed. So that one stayed the same. I like it. All right, so that is the characters. Overall, I think the characters, I would say overall they got better because they either got more spells or I like what the spells do. All that you want her to be healing, she heals a lot better. She's still able to do the other buffs that you like, and Indomitable is a good use, and hitting some opponents is useful as well. So overall, I like the changes to the characters. Might technically not always be better, but I think it's good gameplay changes. All right, so we have to start talking about actual units. This will go a bit faster because there's less to kind of say for the moment. Raiders, they are the Force Mortal unit. They went up by 10 points, so they're more expensive. They went up in speed, so they're now move 6 instead of move 5. Same clash, they're still 4 attacks, sitting on 4 wounds with a 2 resolve, 1 defense, 1 evade. But, could go to 2 with the right characters. The big thing is that before they were Impact 2 and Flurry. They're still Impact 2 and Flurry, but now they get Tenacious 1. So, your saves aren't great, but you get to save one. One that you failed, you just get that one. So, you are a bit more survivable. You are getting your standard for free as well. So your standard used to be 15 points. You're only 10 points more. So you're really saving 5 points because you really do want your standards and all, especially when you hit impact. You want to be able to reroll those charges. You want to be able to get the extra inch, but you also want to be able to reroll those charges to make sure that you get in. Otherwise, the upgrades they can take are effectively the same at the same points cost. And you can still take the same as Outlaw Officers, everything like that. Although now there's only 2 options. And your additional stands are 5 points more. So to get bigger, costs you a little bit more, but you're getting the free standard and Tenacious, so you're saving a little bit more. Raiders are a nice bread and butter sort of unit. They're nothing to write home about, but what they do, they can do pretty decently. They're lights, so they can get out there. They can get out there, at move 6 pretty far. Hit into some of your opponents' maybe lighter things. You actually have ways now to be grabbing some spots. So let's take a look at how Blood of the Hanyar works here. Your command stand would count as 1 additional stand for the purposes of seizing objective zones. Now, in the past, this wouldn't have mattered whatsoever, honestly. The reason it matters now is because they've separated more so than they used to. It was probably separated before, but it wasn't very clearly put. Was they've separated much more than they used to in terms of what it means to score and what it means to contest. A light stand has a seizing value of 0. Naturally, you count as +1 to the seize on that particular stand, which means your command stand is now a seize 1. We talked about this the other day with people we were playing with, and looking through what other people interpret. This is what it is currently. Maybe it will change in the future, but for the current moment, that does mean you have some options to get some of these lights to score if they're charging in and you're getting your command stands onto the objectives. So because of that, they're definitely better. Overall, I mean, for what they have, they're definitely better. And the difference in points isn't going to really change too much for you. If you liked Raiders before, you're going to like Raiders now. Actually, one thing I want to skip right back to real quick. For anyone who doesn't know, they lowered the amount of items compared to what you used to have in most ways. So when we take a look at these items, I only want to discuss for the moment the ones that only the mortals can take. First one then would be Raven Messengers. Raven Messengers got 10 points cheaper. The overall effect is cleaned up and very similar, although now you're looking at mortal regiments. So when the regiment, the character that owns this, is attached to is not broken, mortal regiments within 12 get to use that character's resolve. Your characters are obviously going to be better resolved than your units, so very useful. The other one before was effectively the same, but it talked about, well, if they were broken, then you can't do it. They cleaned up the language. We'll talk about Heralds of the Storm, because that's your 2 casters, and we've already talked about the casters. For Heralds of the Storm, was that a thing before? There it is. How to find it. I knew it was, but I just couldn't find it as quickly as I wanted to. That's why. Maybe I couldn't find it because I blocked it out of my memory for what Heralds of the Storm does. Heralds of the Storm was a 30-point, depending on your sort of meta, or if you have a spare 30, you absolutely want. Because it means for 1 round, no spell casting. If you're going against someone like me who plays Sorcerer Kings, absolutely crippling. Most armies, it is pretty strong against. There's a few, obviously you can make lists that don't have this, but a lot of your lists probably do. And shutting it down, you're shutting it down for yourself as well. And notice it is a draw event. So that does mean if you want it to go early, you could go early with it. If you want to make sure whoever doesn't have this upgrade gets their spells off, they go, then this goes. So it's not at the start of the round, but there's a little bit of the timing thing there. However, like I said, once per game, but absolutely devastating if done correctly. Whereas now, your regiments within 8 inches of the character stand are +3 for scaling when they are targeted. Much more fair. Honestly, overall probably better though as well, just because it keeps working and it does make it harder for your opponent to actually get their spells off, assuming the spell has scaling. So, when they have the correct rules, it's going to help you a lot. And if they don't have it, it's not going to do a thing for you. But maybe not better overall, but better for the health of the game. Because again, you have now, especially that you have a faction that cares only about casting. You have some other spots when I think about Old Dominion, I cast quite a bit. I've in every game, 100 Kingdoms I've played, I see chapter mages. I see all these pieces, so it's a good change. Huskarls got an extra inch, so it's pretty common here for those movement purposes. Otherwise, stats are staying exactly the same. Their points are staying the same. You are getting your free standard though, so you're saving yourself 10 points. You still got shields, you still got impact 2, you're still untouchable, and you are 5 extra points a stand now. That's the difference in price. Used to be 50, now you're 5 extra, but you're not going to necessarily feel it for a little bit. These guys were good before, they're good now. These guys are defense 2, resolve 3, so they're a little bit stronger. They're sitting at medium, so much easier for them to score. A 3-pack of these hitting someone is going to get some damage on the impacts. You have some decent shot to get some numbers out of those clashes. and your command stance counting an extra, so you're a little 4 then attempting for them when they swing back at you. And like I said, you actually have decent defense, especially for this army, sitting on 3s because of that shield. So if you like cross crawls before, they're better. For the next unit, there we go. Ulfidnar. I'd find where they were. So Ulfidnar lost 20 points, so they are cheaper. Move 6, so they didn't change their move. They did lose an attack. They were 8, which is nutty, but now they're down to 7, which is still very, very good. Other stats, otherwise, they're 4 wounds, 4 resolve. Defense not so great at 2, but they have the rest of it. They have Vanguard base now, so you're getting 18 inches that first turn. Or the first turn that they're in, I should say. And Tenacious 1. They used to have Bloodlust. Bloodlust effectively has been removed because they don't like the idea of you don't get control of your unit. I have not seen, I'm sure it happens, and in the comments below, tell me the cool time it happened for you, but I haven't seen the Bloodlust work where you were able to get the charge coming on and really get something good into people, because people knew it was a thing. Or these guys will come in a bit too early, or whatever it may be for different reasons. You also used to have Lethal Demise. Lethal Demise is great. You are only 4 wounds, though, so you were probably getting shellacked. If someone hits you, since it's coming off of when you're getting actually taking those hits, yeah, Lethal Demise comes off of the defense, not related to resolve. So actually, your numbers meant you were going to get a decent amount of Lethal Demise on them, but resolve of 4 means at least you won't take too many extra. Now you just don't have that at all, so you're not getting the auto hitbacks. You do get your standard bear for free, so you are saving 15 points. So you're saving quite a bit in points. You are like 35 points cheaper if you're going to be taking that upgrade. However, you know, Bloodlust, losing that is good. I think that's absolutely good. But the Lethal Demise was fun. So I would say with the Vanguard, I like them more. Losing the attack is okay. That's not that much of a difference. Saving quite a bit of points makes it much easier to get more of these in or something else. Maybe buy an upgrade for someone. The Tenacious will help you survive. You are not hurting anyone coming back, though. So that's fine. I think probably before I think they're more fun. I think these guys are more reliable. And for a redo, giving some reliability, I think is useful. For the Valkyrie, it's still set at 150. You're getting a free standard, so you're saving yourself 15 points. You are blessed. You are devout. You have shield. You have support 2. You have all the same things you did before. You are faster. You are now move 6. This army is essentially going to 6 instead of the 5s that I had before. But otherwise, you're the same. So you gained 1 inch of movement. You liked them before. You're going to like them now. That's it. Really good if you are taking the Volva. So I think we got, yeah, Berserks. This should be, I believe, our last one, if I'm counting correctly. So Berserks, again, lost 20 points. So cheaper in general. You're getting the free standard. Used to cost you 15. Lost Bloodlust, which is great. They are now faster at that move of 6. That is their only, oh no, their stats actually did change a bit. They used to be 3s in defense and 5 resolve. They are now 2s in defense and 4 resolve. So they're not nearly as hardy, but they did gain an evade. So they at least always have a 1. They did get the Tenacious 1, so you are auto succeeding on 1, but pound for pound, unless someone is actually cutting through your work or through your armor and stuff like that, you are saving less in general, and your resolve is worse. I'm a fan of not having resolve 5 in the game personally. I think it's a little bit oppressive, but overall, you do get Vanguard, so you're moving a lot faster. You still have your Cleave 2, but you lost Linebreaker. Cleave 2 is enough until the time it's not enough. So Cleave 2 is going to be in through people's, oh, they have a shield with Bastion. It's eating through that. Oh, but then when you're normal defense. With Linebreaker, I remove all that, and then I'm going through. With Linebreaker, it means if you don't have Evade, you might not be getting a save at all for most things, or your save is a 1. Or, again, going straight to your Evade. With just base Cleave 2, there is enough stuff where people have shields or hardened and all those sorts of rules where you're just not getting through it. Yeah, I know the line breaker wouldn't help with hardened, but it would help with the shield that you have hardened as well. So you're not as effective. So you gained 20 points plus 15 for the standard. So let's assume 35. You're faster in both move and vanguard. You survive a not better, a little differently because tenacious is useful. So if someone happens to whiff or you happen to roll well, tenacious will be good, but otherwise you are taking much more damage. So overall, and you lost line breaker. Losing bloodlust is important. So I would say, and 10 points cheaper per additional stand. So you're a decent bit cheaper. It's hard to say. I think these guys, I don't think I like them more than I used to. With Resolve 5, Bloodlust didn't really matter too much. You really weren't worried about it. So that wasn't a detriment. Linebreaker is a very useful thing to have. Vanguard with Tenacious is a nice trade-off for sure. I don't know. I think I kind of liked maybe a little bit of what they did before, but they were just more points. And I don't know if what they did before was worth being those more points. So you know what? I think it's good changes. I think it fits what they want the army to do, which is getting into people. These guys will get into people much faster. They just don't do quite as much when they get there, and they don't survive nearly as well. I know you got Tenacious 1, but on average dice rolls, you are taking a good amount more wounds than you used to because your defense is one worse and your resolve is one worse. And you're only auto-stopping one. So if they don't have anything to remove your defenses, it's not too different on, say, 6 dice or something like that. Your difference isn't really much if it's one thing. But if they can cut through, yeah, you have an evade now. But if they are cutting through it all, you're losing quite a bit more because then your resolve really starts coming into play as well. That one extra point down will start to make a difference. I went against some Dwag the other day who some of the guys are on defenses for. If I just make you roll enough dice, you'll fail enough. You're starting lower and then you have that lower resolve. So, okay. In my mind, worse, but you're saving, but it's cheaper. So if it's a cheaper enough, that's probably worthwhile. You can get to like 4 stands for what you used to run. You'd be looking at 230. You're looking at about 25 points more than what you would have had before to get an extra stand. That would make it worth it there, I think, to me. I do believe that is the last one. Yeah, because then we get to Jotnar's at the end. Okay, so let's talk the mortals for a second here. We saw the spellcasting get better to me. We saw a lot of the units themselves. The 2 newer of the units got cheaper, definitely changed a little bit of their focus. You have similar things, but they're not quite as feast or famine as they probably were before. They're probably a little bit more reliable now in certain ways, and they're cheaper, so that helps out as well. Berserks, I'm not quite as big on, but the Ulfatnar I do like. I do like Berserks. I would need to see them played to determine whether or not I like the changes enough for what you're saving. I'm not sure yet. For the other ones though, I liked the little bits that we saw. We saw a move to 6 now, so we saw a good bit faster. We saw Vanguard on a few of those units to really be able to get into the opponent faster, which is what they're trying to do here, or get into the opponent at all. And the loss of Bloodlust is great. It didn't really matter so much to the Berserks, but for the Ilfadnar, it matters a bit more. And even then, on your Berserks, if you rolled that 6 on that unit and now they don't get to do what they want, that's rough. They're staying on an objective. That's what they want to do. Score me some points, and I had to pull them off. It's bad. As someone who has played it in First Blood, because in First Blood some units have it still where the other side did not, it's rough. But compared to the Half-Bloods, the Half-Blood changes I liked more. I think there was more that they did for it, but maybe they needed more. Here, a lot more little bits. At least the way I see it. All right, well, that'll do it for us on this particular one. So this was all the mortals. The next one we are going to do is the exalted. That will end out that, and then we'll come back and take a look at the army overall. And now that we have all the bits and pieces, we can kind of make that discussion. You should be seeing the other parts of that later this week, and then we'll be getting into the very last faction, which is the Wadroon we have to talk about. Once I'm done that, then I can get back into some other things that I want to do, including ranking these factions in terms of new player friendliness or getting someone into the game and all of that. Like I said, keep in mind, if you want to pick up anything from Conquest, we got a discount code show notes below. But otherwise, on behalf of everyone at the show, has a good hobby, it's a great gaming.